It was a bitter December afternoon in Toronto, one that should have been quiet and uneventful in the affluent neighborhood where Barry and Honey Sherman lived. But on that day, their luxurious mansion became the scene of a chilling mystery. The Shermans weren't just any couple. Barry, a billionaire mogul, had built an empire in the pharmaceutical world, a field where competitors can become foes and allies may turn into adversaries. Honey, his devoted partner, was known for her warmth, community work, and the connections she forged across the city. Together, they were a powerful force, beloved by some, envied by others. When their bodies were discovered in a strange and haunting scene, whispers of foul play swept through the media and Toronto's high society. What really happened behind the closed doors of their mansion? Was it the product of a lifetime's worth of rivalries? Or was it something closer to home, a dark secret that only those closest to the Shermans might have known? With unanswered questions, shifting theories, and the unsettling silence of an unsolved case, we'll journey through the secrets and speculations that haunt the lives and deaths of Barry and Honey Sherman. Buckle up as we unravel this enigma, one that has left detectives, family, and an entire city searching for the truth. Join me for another ride through the odd, mysterious, and strange here at Odd Mysteries Stories. Barry Sherman was a visionary in the pharmaceutical world. Born in 1942, he pursued engineering and earned a doctorate from MIT. In 1974, he founded Apotex, a company that would grow into one of Canada's largest generic drug manufacturers. Barry was known for his sharp intellect and tenacity, often challenging established norms in the industry. His approach made him both a pioneer and, at times, a contentious figure among competitors. Honey Sherman was born in 1945, complemented Barry's drive with her own passion for philanthropy. She dedicated much of her life to supporting charities, hospitals, and cultural organizations throughout Toronto. Honey was celebrated for her warmth, generosity, and ability to bring people together. Her involvement extended beyond writing checks. She actively participated in fundraising events and community initiatives. Together, Barry and Honey formed a powerful partnership. Their marriage was built on mutual respect and shared ambitions. They raised four children and were considered pillars of both the business and social communities. The Shermans' lavish home in affluent North York neighborhood was often the venue for charitable events and gatherings. Their success, however, wasn't without challenges. Barry's aggressive business tactics led to legal disputes and rivalries within the pharmaceutical industry. Competitors sometimes viewed Apotec's rise with skepticism, and Barry faced several lawsuits over the years. Despite these hurdles, the Shermans maintained a reputation for resilience and continued to expand their influence. What was it about the Shermans that intrigued so many? Was it their ascent to immense wealth, the philanthropic efforts, or the way they navigated the complexities of high stakes business? As we explore their lives, we might wonder, did the very qualities that made them successful also place them in unforeseen jeopardy? It was a day like any other in Toronto's upscale North York neighborhood, but December 15, 2017 would soon be remembered for something far darker. That morning, the Shermans' real estate agent arrived at their mansion for a scheduled showing. Barry and Honey had recently put their home up for sale, planning to downsize, and had even begun organizing plans for a new property. But when the agent entered the house, she found something disturbing, something no one could have anticipated. In the basement, near the indoor pool, the bodies of Barry and Honey Sherman were discovered. They were seated side by side on the floor, their necks restrained with belts tied to a railing. The positioning was eerily deliberate, almost staged, yet no clear signs of forced entry or obvious evidence of a struggle could be found. It was as though they'd been placed there intentionally, in a scene meant to conceal as much as it revealed. News of the discovery sent shockwaves through the Toronto community, and soon the entire nation was buzzing with questions. How could such a tragic event happen to one of the wealthiest, most influential couples in Canada, right in their own home? Was this a targeted act or something else altogether? Initial details were sparse, leaving much to speculation. The lack of broken locks or signs of break in puzzled investigators and the public alike. How could someone, if someone was indeed responsible, have accessed the Shermans' secure home without leaving a single trace? As the day wore on, detectives and forensic experts descended upon the Shermans' residence, searching for anything that might explain the circumstances of their deaths. Family members, friends, and business associates were contacted, all shocked and distraught by the grim news. The public was left to wonder, was this a tragic domestic incident, or had the Shermans been deliberately silenced? The mystery had only begun, and each question seemed to lead only to more questions. What dark secrets, if any, could be lurking beneath the surface of the Shermans' otherwise public lives? As news of Barry and Honey Sherman's deaths spread, the Toronto police quickly moved to investigate, but what initially seemed straightforward soon grew increasingly complex. At first, investigators considered the possibility of a murder-suicide. This was largely based on the unusual positioning of the bodies and the lack of visible evidence indicating forced entry or an outside struggle. However, the murder-suicide theory didn't sit well with those who knew the Shermans personally. Friends and family were vocal in their disbelief, describing Barry and Honey as grounded, compassionate, and family-focused people. Barry, though embroiled in high-stakes business disputes, was not known to show any signs of emotional distress or erratic behavior. Honey, deeply invested in her community, was well loved and respected. The couple's loved ones argued that there was simply no reason for them to believe they would take such drastic actions. Unsettled by the implications, Barry and Honey's children issued a public statement questioning the initial assumptions of the police. They insisted that their parents would never harm each other and demanded a thorough, unbiased investigation. This push led the authorities to take a closer look, and soon they began shifting their focus away from the murder-suicide theory. The Toronto Police Services Homicide Unit took over the case, reclassifying it as, quote, a targeted double homicide. A statement released by the police acknowledged that they believed someone had deliberately chosen to take the lives of Barry and Honey Sherman. Yet, the more they examined the evidence, the fewer answers they found. It became clear that whoever was responsible had left little behind. No signs of a struggle, no fingerprints, and no conclusive evidence pointing to a specific suspect. Forensic teams combed through the Shermans' mansion, analyzing every square foot for clues, while detectives began interviewing people close to the couple. Associates from Barry's business world, close friends, and family members were all brought in for questioning. Each potential lead was scrutinized, but nothing concrete surfaced. If this was indeed a targeted killing, who would want Barry and Honey dead? And why would someone go to such lengths to avoid leaving any trace? These questions left the police at a standstill, while the Shermans' family, friends, and community were left grappling with the reality of their loss and the unsettling mystery surrounding it. With the investigation taking a new direction, one question continued to haunt everyone involved. What motive could be so powerful, so calculated, that it led to the brutal end of one of Toronto's most respected couples? As the investigation progressed, the Toronto police sought additional insights from forensic experts. Autopsies were conducted on both Barry and Honey Sherman, aiming to uncover clues that might explain how their lives ended so abruptly. The findings, however, only deepened the mystery. According to autopsy reports, Barry and Honey's cause of death was, quote, ligature neck compression, a term used to describe strangulation. This was a significant discovery, as it directly challenged earlier assumptions and left little doubt that they had not taken their own lives. The findings confirmed that they had both been victims of a double homicide, putting to rest any remaining whispers of a murder-suicide scenario. But there was more. Medical examiners noted a lack of defensive wounds on either Barry or Honey, which raised questions of its own. Had they been restrained or incapacitated in some way before their deaths? The absence of marks or injuries on their hands and arms suggested they may have been unable to resist or protect themselves, a fact that led investigators to consider the possibility that they might have known their killer, or at least felt comfortable enough to let someone into their home. The revelation of these autopsy details had a profound impact on both the investigation and the public perception of the case. The notion that the Shermans could have been deliberately targeted, potentially by someone they knew, added a layer of fear and fascination to the story. It was no longer just an unusual crime, it was a chilling act of violence against two respected members of society, executed with precision and a calculated absence of evidence. For their part, the Sherman family found some solace in the conclusion of homicide, as it aligned with what they had believed all along. But now, even more unsettling questions emerged. Why would someone want to end the lives of Barry and Honey Sherman? Who could carry out such a calculated act without leaving a trace? And how did they manage to escape detection in a high-security neighborhood with virtually no signs of forced entry? The lack of immediate suspects and the sophisticated nature of the crime hinted at the possibility of a professional hit, or an inside job, theories that would soon take root in both the media and the public's mind. But with so little evidence to go on, investigators faced an uphill battle. As they delved deeper into the Shermans' lives, they had to wonder, could there have been someone hiding in plain sight? Someone who knew them well enough to walk freely into their home, and ruthless enough to orchestrate their deaths with such cold precision. With the confirmation of homicide, the investigation took a new, intense turn, focusing on potential motives that could explain why anyone would want to harm Barry and Honey Sherman. Public speculation ran high, and soon theories began to surface, each as complex and perplexing as the last. Barry Sherman's business acumen had earned him both fortune and notoriety. Apotex, his company, had grown into a pharmaceutical powerhouse by pushing boundaries in the industry, often facing off with larger, well-established corporations. Barry was known for his aggressive approach to business, which included numerous legal battles with both competitors and former associates. His rise to the top had not been without controversy, and it wasn't difficult to imagine that he had made enemies along the way. Could someone from Barry's competitive industry have wanted him gone? A competitor who viewed him as an insurmountable obstacle? Among these rivals were his own cousins, with whom he had a long-standing legal dispute over Apotex. Barry's cousins had once claimed they were entitled to a portion of the company's profits, a claim Barry staunchly fought against. Although Barry had emerged victorious in court, the bitterness of the legal fight had never fully faded. Was it possible that old grudges had resurfaced in the worst way imaginable? While Barry's battles in the business world were well known, there were also whispers of tension closer to home, complexities within the family, from financial arrangements to inheritance expectations, were not unheard of. Given the Shermans' considerable wealth, inheritance was a topic that could easily lead to discord. Although nothing concrete suggested that family issues were to blame, investigators couldn't entirely rule out the possibility of internal conflicts, especially when considering the financial legacy left behind. In addition to their business and philanthropic activities, the Shermans were politically active, making significant donations to various political campaigns. They maintained relationships with high-profile figures in Canada, and Barry, at times, had spoken out on issues that placed him at odds with influential individuals, Some wondered whether their political affiliations or Barry's outspoken nature had created hidden enemies. While no direct evidence linked to their political involvement to the murders, the theory added another layer to an already convoluted case. The calculated nature of the crime led some to suspect a professional hit. The lack of evidence and the precise method by which the Shermans were killed pointed to someone who knew how to leave as few traces as possible. Such a theory suggested a skilled killer with a clear motive, but hired by whom and for what reason? Each theory raised more questions than answers. Could an embittered rival, a resentful family member, or even a powerful political figure have been involved? Or was the Shermans' demise orchestrated by someone who knew them intimately, someone who could act without raising suspicion? The investigation was still in its early stages, and the list of possible motives continued to grow. But as detectives explored these theories, they had to consider what kind of secret could be worth a risk as great as taking the lives of one of Canada's most influential couples. Frustrated by the pace and direction of the official police investigation, the Sherman family decided to take matters into their own hands. Just weeks after the initial findings, Barry and Honey's four children announced they were hiring a team of private investigators to conduct an independent inquiry. They had always believed that the Toronto Police Service's early assumption of a murder suicide had been a misjudgment, and they wanted a fresh set of eyes on the case. This private investigation team, led by a former Toronto homicide detective, wasted no time. They re examined the crime scene, pored over the autopsy findings, and conducted their own interviews. Unlike the official investigation, which operated under standard procedures, the family funded team was able to move swiftly and assertively, digging into leads that the police might have overlooked. One of the major actions taken by the private investigators was a second autopsy, which supported the original findings of homicide but provided additional insights. The private team concluded that Barry and Honey had been strangled with belts and positioned in a way that suggested a deliberate staging. This staged appearance only deepened the mystery, as it hinted that the killer, or killers, wanted to control how the scene would be perceived. As the private team continued their work, they publicly offered a reward of $10 million for information leading to an arrest. The significant reward underscored the family's determination to find answers, and it was also a strategic move to reunite public interest in the case. With such a large sum at stake, the hope was that someone, somewhere, might come forward with crucial information. But despite this incentive, the reward remained unclaimed, leaving the family and investigators grasping at shadows. The private investigation raised some unsettling possibilities. It suggested that the killers had not only been calculated in their actions, but also sophisticated enough to evade capture and leave no clear trail. Could it have been a professional hit? The private team's findings led some to believe so, although they were careful not to draw premature conclusions without solid proof. In an interview, the private investigation team hinted that they were exploring leads that extended beyond Toronto, possibly even outside of Canada. This international angle suggested a broader scope of inquiry, which included scrutinizing Barry's global business relationships and potential disputes that might have had serious consequences. Despite these efforts, neither the private team nor the police were able to provide a definitive breakthrough. The Shermans family, having exhausted considerable resources, remained hopeful but increasingly wary that their search for justice might never bring them answers they so desperately sought. Was the truth buried somewhere in Barry's vast network of business dealings? Or was it hidden in plain sight, waiting to be uncovered by a single clue that had yet to emerge? The private investigators' efforts had brought renewed attention to the case, but the elusive answers remained just out of reach, leaving a haunting reminder of the couple's tragic end. As years passed, Toronto police remained under pressure from the public and the Sherman family to keep the investigation active. While the private investigation had raised significant questions, the official police efforts persisted, though publicly, progress seemed painstakingly slow. Then, in December of 2021, 4 years after the Shermans' deaths, the police made a surprising announcement that brought a new twist to the case. In a press briefing, Toronto police released surveillance footage showing an unidentified individual walking near the Shermans' home around the estimated time of the murders. The grainy video, captured by neighborhood cameras, depicted a figure moving along the sidewalk. The person's identity was obscured, and their walk was slow, almost aimless, as if trying to blend in or avoid attracting attention. This person, police said, was now considered a suspect in the case. The footage set off a wave of media coverage, reviving public interest in the mystery. Speculation ran wild, with theories ranging from a hitman sent by a business adversary to someone from within the Shermans' social or family circle. Could this person have been watching the house, waiting for the right moment to strike? Or was it simply an unlucky passerby caught in the wrong place at the wrong time? Detectives stated that they had not been able to identify the individual in the footage, and the video itself was of limited clarity. Nevertheless, police were convinced this was a significant lead. They appealed to the public for any information that might help identify the person, reiterating that they remained committed to finding answers. Although this new suspect provided a glimmer of hope, the police were careful to avoid making any promises about a breakthrough. They admitted that, even with advanced technology and facial recognition tools, tracking down an unidentified figure from years prior posed a substantial challenge. The task was further complicated by the fact that the Shermans' neighborhood, while upscale, had minimal security presence and few surveillance cameras, leaving investigators with little footage to work with. Despite this new piece of evidence, police have remained tight-lipped about other potential leads or suspects. Some theorize they may have additional information that they are withholding, either to protect the integrity of the investigation or because leads remain inconclusive. Frustratingly, for those close to the case, the mystery continued to deepen rather than unfold. The release of the video raised more questions than it answered. Who was this person, and why were they in the area on that fateful day? Were they an accomplice or even the killer? And if so, how had they managed to avoid detection for so long? The release of the footage marked a new chapter in the investigation, but left a sense of unease among the public. The case of Barry and Honey Sherman remained unsolved, haunted by questions that grew with every year that passed. As Toronto police pursued this lead, one pressing question remained. Would the answers ever come? Years have now passed since the tragic deaths of Barry and Honey Sherman, and the case remains one of Canada's most perplexing unsolved mysteries. Despite the intensive efforts by both the Toronto Police Service and private investigators hired by the Sherman family, the search for answers continues with no conclusive end in sight. For the family, friends, and public, the lack of closure has only deepened the intrigue and frustration surrounding the case. Public interest in the mystery has not waned. If anything, it has grown. Barry and Honey Sherman's story has become a focal point for true crime enthusiasts and amateur sleuths, all eager to piece together clues that might have been overlooked. Online forums, social media, and news outlets are rife with theories and speculations, keeping the case alive in the collective consciousness. But for all the speculation, there is still no clear suspect, no definitive motive, and no resolution in sight. The Sherman family, relentless in their pursuit of justice, has continued to push for new avenues of investigation. The substantial $10 million reward for information leading to an arrest remains unclaimed, a stark reminder of the case's enduring mystery. Some wonder if anyone out there holds the key to unraveling the truth and is simply unwilling to come forward. Toronto police, for their part, have assured the public that the case remains open and active. Investigators are periodically reevaluating the evidence with the hope that advances in forensic technology or new information might eventually break the case. But with each passing year, the odds seem to shrink, leaving many to wonder if this mystery will ever be solved. The unanswered questions continue to haunt those who knew the Shermans and captivate the minds of those who follow their story. Was it a rival from Barry's complex world of pharmaceutical deals? A family member with a hidden grievance? A politically motivated adversary? Or perhaps a carefully calculated hit by a professional killer? Each theory seems plausible, yet remains painfully incomplete. The story of Barry and Honey Sherman stands as a reminder of how even the most public lives can conceal deep secrets, and how wealth, power, and influence cannot protect against all dangers. As the world waits for answers, the case remains open, a shadow over Toronto's affluent community and a mystery that refuses to fade. Will the truth ever come to light? Or will the deaths of Barry and Honey Sherman remain a haunting question, forever locked behind closed doors? Hey, wasn't that a really sad story about Barry and Honey Sherman? I sure do hope that their surviving family and friends one day receive answers to the mystery. My name is Vince. Would you please consider supporting the channel in any way that you can? Otherwise, if you look up at the top right-hand corner of your screen, you'll see the story of Harry and Meghan, another unsolved couple's mystery. Thank you.